I did my best to keep this short, but there's a lot here. I'm responding to comments on my Facebook page about my presentation at County Board. Check it out. There's a lot to talk about. Today I'm responding to questions that came into my Facebook site after I shared the video of my speaking to County Board on Thursday the 22nd. And I'm just going to summarize a couple of things from what I'm responding to. The first question was, who exactly on the board is ill-informed? The second question is, why are you more informed? You, me being Sanford. And what are the solutions that I would provide? Awesome. So what I'm going to do is talk about the solutions as I would provide them. I am going to have a hard time keeping this short. So I apologize in advance if I run a little long, because this is the area that I know very well. And I'm going to talk about making change in government. I'm going to talk about how I would approach these things. So again, there's a lot here. I appreciate your time. Stick around for all of it. I promise it's good stuff. Okay. Who is exactly ill-informed and why am I better informed? Well, the answer is I'm not well informed because I'm a member of the public. The only information that I have access to are the packets that are prepared for meetings and the meetings themselves, which are either the county board or its committees. I do not have access to information that has been shared with county board members in closed meetings or what discussions occurred in closed meetings. So in fact, the county board is better informed than I am because they have access to that information. What I am saying is that they're not using that information to do their jobs. What their job should be is to ask questions about what is being proposed, to dig in on details, and to make sure that we are making good decisions, planning well, and executing well on what we want to do because they are looking out for the best interests of the county. My concerns about what the county executive is doing here is that they are pushing plans in front of the county board to be rubber stamped, but there's not a proper consideration of what those plans are. So how would I do these things differently? I'm going to talk about each of the three things that was rubber stamped. Well, two of them were rubber stamped and one of them was postponed until next month. I'm going to talk about each of those three topics and what my recommendations would be. Let's start with the grants coordinator and the grants reporting clerk. Now, currently, the grants coordinator is an existing position that is funded from the county board's budget. So actually, that money is being reused to hire the grant coordinator, which reports to the county executive's office. The proposal that is being made changes the funding for the grants coordinator. It turns in to be 25% funded by the firearm safety grant, another 25% by the redeploy adult grant, and 50% by the juvenile redeploy grant. Well, right off the bat, that's part of the problem, because that 50% coming from the juvenile redeploy grant assumed that those positions were being moved underneath the grants coordinator. That resolution was tabled and may or may not come through. That'll be the third thing I discuss. So the county board has approved a position with funding that may or may not be available for it. Second is, one of the things about grants, and I have a long experience working with grants at state and federal levels, you cannot depend that the grant will continue to arrive. New grants are needed, funding sources do dry up, as we've seen at the federal level, or the state runs into a fiscal crisis. And so one of the problems with grant funding these positions is that you run into the scenario where grant funding dries up. And then what happens to our employees? So I'd like to hear more plans about that. And that applies not just to the grant coordinator, but to the grant reporting clerk. Let's talk about the grant reporting clerk. The idea here is a good one. Grant reporting is a very difficult process. You have to accumulate information. You have to fill out different forms for different grants. I wish it was standardized. You have to send that information to the grantor, who could be the state, it could be the feds, it could be some other entity as well. It's a lot of work. The county has grants in different groups. So what I'm inferring, although it's not stated, from this proposal is that the county executive is proposing to consolidate those functions underneath one person who will be grant reporting countywide. It's a good idea and concept. The problem is making this work. First of all, there's no analysis or list of which departments have grants, what grants they have, how often they do their reporting, or if the reporting could be done by a different group as effectively. There's also no discussion about what's going to happen to the funding for the departments who have those grants now and may use some of the administrative costs for the reporting part that they do to fund some of their efforts. These are important concepts to discuss and understand before we move forward with this process. Otherwise, we could wind up with a disjointed situation where the grant reporting clerk is there, but other people are still doing their own stuff as well. And then we're just duplicating work and duplicating positions. How would I handle this differently? I would take the time to do that analysis before I bring the proposal to the county board. I would have presented the information with details. I would talk about workloads. I would talk about how these responsibilities are going to move over and lines of communication and reporting. That would be information I would want to see if I were on the county board. Okay, let's move to the second one, the facilities reorganization. Now, this one passed, so in theory, it's a done deal. But let me tell you some of my concerns about it. First of all, there still is no public information available that shows how this restructure is going to be done for the same cost. The statement was made during the January 22nd meeting that this information was shared with the Facilities Committee. Well, if it was shared with the Facilities Committee, it was in the closed session they went to in December. It is not available to the public. Furthermore, during that meeting in December of the Facilities Committee, there was a memo with this information that was passed out in the room and not part of the packet. So these are some of the transparency issues that I have with the county executive's office. It's not sharing this information with us, the residents, the voters, the taxpayers, to tell us what the plans are. The only financial information that we have on this is what was presented during public participation at the Committee of the Whole meeting in January, when one of the senior facilities employees spoke about the numbers based on his calculations, again, best information we have, and that the numbers did not add up. And that's my big concern as well. How do you pay for 3 employees with their benefits for the cost of 2 employees? I just want to see the numbers to make sure that this makes sense. I do agree that some parts of this change are a good idea. It sounds like the manager had too many direct reports. That is a problem. It is important that we make our structure make sense. So I'm not against this idea in concept. I'm against rushing it through without full transparency about how it's going to be funded, what will happen to those employees in their jobs now, and to show that consultation with the team of facilities was made to make these changes. I am not confident, certainly not based on the public participation from the Committee of the Whole meeting in January, that key facilities employees were listened to or had a chance to provide input before this was sent to the Facilities Committee for their discussion. We learned that it was only sent to the staff 7 hours in advance. So I would say, whoa, let's slow down. Let's come up with a plan for how this is going to work. Let's make the numbers work, and let's figure this out in an orderly transition. And that is my big complaint about the way that process is being done. The third item is the juvenile redeploy grant. This one was tabled at the meeting on Thursday, the 22nd, so it'll go into next month. That's a good decision because what we heard in the meeting is that the groups who are working on this are in discussions, that there is a process beginning in February to reapply for the next year of the grant, and that some new structure could be put in place with that. Good. Let's everybody slow down and let that process work through. We also heard at the meeting that there are several locations within the county that would make sense for the juvenile redeploy grant, and it may not make the most sense in the county executive's office. Part of that, which I discussed in my public participation, is that you don't want to have too much change all at once. And if the executive department is already still digesting the financial responsibilities it took on, and now it's pulling in all the facilities and doing a reorganization of that, to also take over responsibility for delivering the juvenile redeploy grant, that's a lot all at once. So I would say let's pump the brakes, let the process go through. The discussion can occur where they find the right place in the county for this grant to live. There is no clear pressing need that I heard at the meeting, and there was some discussion among board members about how to interpret public comments from the committee of the whole. There does not seem to be a pressing need to move this grant from the Cunningham Children's Home. They are willing to continue this grant in the short term while a better plan is made to carry it out. And that's what I would support. Let's take our time. Let's make this change rationally and figure out the right process here. So, thank you for hanging around this long, if you really did. I know you did because you're watching this part, so thank you. I am trying to just say, look, these are not bad ideas. They can be done badly. And that's what I want as county executive, is to make sure that we're thoughtful and making careful change, because these are the county's decisions that impact all of us. And it's important. One of the lessons I've learned in multiple decades of government work is that you can't just move fast and break things. That's what the Trump administration is doing. It's a very bad approach to making change in government. Government, you have to understand that it is a slow-moving process. That's just the nature of it. You need to work with that. You need to work with people. You need to collaborate on decision-making. You cannot rush decisions through. That is the key reason that the county board members should be standing up and saying, whoa, 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 we want to hear more plans on how this is going to work before we approve these changes. Unfortunately, some of these changes have already been approved. Now, it was only new positions and not new budget. So hopefully there will be a second time in the future when the county executive comes asking for money for these positions, that there are opportunities, to have those conversations. And with that, I will just say a hearty thank you for your time. Follow the page if you're not already, and please stay warm.